Yep. Yeah. Thank you all for joining today. My name is Prashant, and I have Abhishek, Fanindra, and Vishal as well with me. We are hosting this boot camp, and it's a long series of 4 month plus boot camp. So stay tuned for all the future sessions. Yeah. So housekeeping, please maintain all your Q&As in the chat session during the session and post if you have questions post the session. Please use this QR code or link to post any of the Q&A questions and it will be answered during AMA sessions. So also all these recordings will be uploaded onto SFMC Bootcamp Recordings YouTube channel as well as on Singapore Marketers Group as well. And please follow Trailblazer Community Group for Singapore Marketers Group for Pardot by scanning this QR code in the third column. Okay, yeah, funny. Yeah, so today's session will be mainly on how to start your career. No, so today's session will be mostly on basically on digital marketing program governance and implementation overview. On the screen, you're seeing the four members of the organizing team: Abhishek Nagar, who's a technical lead for Salesforce Marketing Cloud. Uh, and Vishal Chawla is a solution architect for Salesforce Marketing Cloud. So Prashant Vadan, myself, I'm a Salesforce technical lead, and Fanindra, who will be your today's speaker as well, is a chief technology evangelist. Over to you, Fani. Thank you.
Thank you, Prashant, and thank you everyone for joining with us today. I'll just share my screen. Let me know once you're able to see my screen, Prashant. Can see my screen, right?
Not yet. Yeah, now we can. Yep.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Today our topic would be Marketing Cloud Bootcamp Episode 3, which is Digital Marketing Program Governance and an Implementation Overview in Salesforce Marketing Cloud. So coming to myself Anindra, and I'm a Chief Technology Evangelist working with Abistoki. And and today I would like to talk about more details about an implementation, how to start Marketing Cloud implementation, and what are the best practices we need to follow in order to execute a Marketing Cloud project without any flaws or without any mistakes. But let me ask a question for all the attendees. What is the most important thing in order to become a successful execution of a successful Marketing Cloud project? So you could type your answer in the chat. I'll see what you can write anything, like you can tell me anything, like what is really required in order to become a successful or executing a successful Marketing Cloud project. What is required? I'll check this. I'll check the chat if anyone write anything over there. Let me see if anyone has any questions. Okay, planning. What else? Clear business requirements. What else? Understanding the customer. All right. Knowing the end user usage. All right. A good discovery and step-by-step implementation along feedbacks. Good analysis. Understanding campaign objective. That's right. Meeting business requirements. Output. Good. Following complaints. Exactly. That's right. Yeah, I think all the answers that what I got is exactly true, and that's what I'm talking about in this session. Thank you for all your answers. So exactly, end-to-end analysis and required goals to reach. So without any delay, I'm going to jump into uh, a clear visibility in order to become a successful project. So you need to follow a governance process. So without the program governance, I don't think any enterprise companies or any good or a small and medium level projects or a big project which is not going to be a success. So you should manage a good program governance. At the same time, you should follow some best practices in order to follow a good Marketing Cloud implementation. All right. Once again, thank you for being at Salesforce Trailblazer. I know all you are doing a great job in the Trailblazer community, and I would personally thank each and everyone, irrespective of your experiences. And thanks for joining with us as well. So that makes your interest towards the Trailblazer community, and which something which you learn about from all of us. At the same time, what you learn from the community, which you can give back to the community as well. At the same time, thank you. Let's talk about our agenda today. So today we would like to talk about a governance overview. which is nothing but what it is, why it's important, elements of the program charter, people and process. This is where we're all struggling a bit in terms of center of excellence, scope management, change management, communications plan. The most, the foremost and the most important thing, what I would believe as a technical guy, which is technical governance, the change management, release readiness, quality assurance, data architecture, and data management. And furthermore, I think as every person, as a chief technology evangelist, I would recommend some recommendations and the next steps and resources which everyone to follow, which ideally gives a lot of momentum for every company to get started with the project implementation along with the recommended accelerators and the success programs, right? So start with the governance. So as I said, every project to start with the governance. That's where it most important for everyone, right? Because it's a framework. It's not a policy. It is just a framework of a certain policies and a practice used by marketing leadership to govern the digital marketing program that ensures your accountability, efficiency, and a compliance as well. So whatever you return the answers in the chat, which is exactly aligned with what we're talking about, that states that the people who join today's session, which is more idealized that what you're doing with your company. So you're a business analyst, you're all a functional consultant folks who are a part of this session. And definitely there might be our technical folks also to be able to understand what is a governance process, what is an accountability that we need to follow. When it comes to the program chapter, every good project starts with a good documentation, right? So we need to have a primary document to align on the key governance elements for the digital marketing programs that covers the space of the program overview. What is your business objective? What are your critical success factors? So as a governance team, when we start doing the requirement gathering, so the first step where I would love everyone to follow, one thing is an objectives of a business. The next thing is you have to ask a business what are the critical success factors that shows the immediate result for your revenue of interest. At the same time, we need to find out a stakeholders. So who are all the main stakeholders for us to interact on a day-to-day basis? And you see the same kind of pattern that what we're talking about, which you can find in our business analyst certification or in data architecture management certifications or any either all the certifications. We see the common pattern questions for 5 to 6 questions. I can see something related to the governance, right? The most important is center of excellence. So this is a team where they'll execute the program, which include the program structure, architects, developers, admins, testers, quality assurance teams, right? Along with the people who start with the project, which contains scope management, the project prioritization, user stories management, campaign request workflow. So this governance is defined specially for marketing cloud folks, which I can talk in the later slides. As a campaign manager, what are all the forms that I need to follow? At the same time, what are all the forms that I need to use to, or leverage to get the necessary information from the client? Alongside, we have project methodology, where a project manager is going to execute, a risk management, where a compliance teams is going to work with, our communications plan, where our internal stakeholders, along with our internal teams, is going to communicate with, change management, it evaluate what change is going to happen within the project or middle of the project or at the end of the project. Quality assurance to test the best quality of each and every user story that what we would love to work with. And the most and very most important thing, any successful project, you should be a good quality of data. It should be a good quality of data designing, data architecture, and a management, which comes with the right quality of data, which comes with your the best data source systems, way to get the data from, what kind of locations we need to target the data to bring into marketing cloud. At the same time, what is the quality of data? What is an architecture that you're making it? What is your subscriber key management? All this comes with data architecture and management. So this is the overall governance that we would like to define and we would like to talk through our entire session. Let's talk about why I'm specifically focusing a key term called governance. So someone definitely one of them which is going to question me. Funny is organizational governance is really at that level of a benefit to execute the project? Of course it is. When you look at enterprise companies where the multiple assignments or the multiple projects has been executing, as a key person from a execution perspective, we should understand who are all the people are a part of this entire governance teams. That gives a different ideology altogether to talk about. Let's take innovation, because as an organization we need to focus on the big picture and to define the process enable to the business to continuously innovate and move forward in the digital marketing maturity model. Let's take an example. I started with email studio, but rather my business started with something good which have opened other four areas in the region, at different regions altogether. I would like to start my digital marketing maturity model, start with email, then engage with SMS, push, ad studio, or social, or plenty of initiative that I would like to go with. That's called an innovation. The next thing, resource optimization, which maximize the use of people, the process, knowledge, and technology. So as we're all seeing, the companies have been, hiring too many people, which you really don't require. I see some of the companies where they're hiring of people, which is, I don't know exactly why they're hiring so much of people. Why don't you leverage or maximize your own people? Let's person has been working on a campaign, or why don't you give some assignment on the activities of the admin or setup? Why don't you hire a separate person for that activity, right? So why don't you put a process together to make it more optimizable? And why don't you share the knowledge internally with your team in order to make it more profitable, rather than hiring a big amount of for chunk of people? Let's share the knowledge within your internal teams or outside of your teams. Have some cross cloud domain expertise to explore within your teams using a technology. The most important thing, prioritization. So when we start doing a business requirements or business initiatives, you should have a certain goals to be defined that need to be identified and prioritized and executed on a different communications business goals level. And the next thing, velocity. So every client or every customer, they would expect a speed up time, because when I start the project, the next question they'll ask, when is the go live date, or where is your implementation plan, when should I expect a go live, are you planning to live on a sprint wise, or you would like to be at a monthly level, or you want to go live with within 2 months, 3 months, so small projects within 3 months. But ideally the enterprise projects which takes my minimum of sprints, where a business is expecting a value addition, the one which you're talking about, the value addition in the next 6 weeks, something like that. The most important factor, compliance. Every company nowadays, uh, with the recent regulations across the GDPR compliance, or different policies across Apple or Google or Microsoft. So compliance playing a huge role for every successful project. Our internal CSOC security teams or the compliance teams to understand when you're not going to implement any login mechanism, so they'll ask you to turn on MFA. They look at all the standardization and the shared best practices to meet regulatory requirement, because you do 90% of the project completion, but at the 10%, I'm 100% sure for every project nowadays, they'll stop you until you get the security compliance sign off. You can't able to move or went an application to go live. This is 100% mandatory for every implementation. The complaints comes with the logins. Complaints comes with your cloud page securities, because nowadays your cloud pages has been hosting into the certain domains. So they'll scan the domains. They leverage the complete complete OWASP policies. If you heard a policies called OWASG, so they are a complete worldwide security policy specially designed for the complaints, where the person has to go and then fulfill all this. That's what complaints do. So there are plenty of things which they do in the marketing cloud as well when you go live. The most important factor, risk mitigation. So there are some standard processes, well-defined communications, and a focus on compliance, reduce project and program risk, right? So we have always a question asked, what is your risk plan? What is your mitigation plan? So that we need to submit at the start of the project, because we know what are all the risk factors while we're drafting the requirements. Because a few times where we don't have control on some of the elements where we should completely focus on. Let's take an example, complaints, where we can't able to do that. That the team will come and then they'll do it. So they'll delay the complaints, they'll delay, sometimes they'll delay while scanning your entire cloud page, they'll delay while procuring subdomains for managing multiple email deliverability, right? So all those things which are not control actually, so which you need to define as a risk at the start of the project. That's where we're talking about. Anyone who define all this risk, please very well communicate with all the stakeholders, very well communicate with your business folks to understand, so that they'll also think that we're all in a proper shape, right? So these are all organizational benefits of a governance. If you want to become a successful project, you need this framework in order to be more successful, right? Again, the people ask me a question. uh, I don't have a people to do all this governance process. I don't have time. I don't have a budget. The client accommodated for me to do all this lack of governance. Okay, okay, boss, you don't have the budget. You don't have anything. That you have to do a. You have to face the consequences, or you have to do a, any problems. So let's take example. What happens if you don't have any plan for program governance? So step number one, we'll start with misalignment of stakeholders, goals, and tactics. It'll low down the tangent ROI, inconsistent data qualities, of course, and because you never ask your questions, you don't know who's the person managing the source data, and you never met the person for the source data teams. They'll push the data into FTP, and you really don't know what kind of data you're ingesting into it, and you don't know what kind of data you want to make a primary keys. Compliance, as I told, if you do compliance before you start the project, or once you are in the middle of the project, it would always be good. If you're not going to do it, that leads to a deliverability issue, because when you scan it, the person will scan all your cloud pages or domains, and they'll find out something is misinterpreted. Then that way it gives a lot of stoppage of the project execution, and they'll have big noises to raise escalations to bigger management. Insufficient or inefficient prioritization of new projects, campaigns, and ideas that thwarting innovations as well. So you do all these, the top 5 6 factors, which leads the duplication of effort again. So what you do is you'll re-again all this. So what it does is, okay, let's start with again fresh, which causes the cost of the project, which causes the time of the resources and everything, which delays or which deviates your poor planning around subscriber lifecycle and content management, which which episode adoption of existing and new features of the platform as well. So these are all the factors which may come if you don't follow the governance process, because some projects where I know it's a small project which is 30,000 cost, and ideally, or a 15,000 cost. So there are certain projects where it will go live within 4 weeks, 6 weeks. There are consulting companies who does provides a jumpstart packages and all this stuff. Of course, they are there, and they have their own governance process. So I'm not strictly saying that it would be nice to have a governance for every project, right? Let's start with the, now we understand the governance process, the pros and the cons of governance. So what I definitely believe, I believe the audience also believes that this really required to become a successful project execution. Now we'll start with the program overview. So when we start with the program overview within the governance process, we need to set some goals and objectives. So there are some strategic objectives, there are some business objectives, critical success factors. So if you start with a strategic objective just set by an organization at an enterprise level, so what it does is, let's take an example. So I'm a marketing, I'm a CMO of the company, chief marketing officer. So I'm the one who designed an objective and then want to have a bigger plan. My bigger plans would be to increase my DM digital marketing revenue. I'll seek generate 10% annual increase in website traffic. I would love to create the 360-degree view of the customer across channels and cloud solutions. I'll see the consolidated point solution into the integrated marketing cloud, right? So I'm a CMO, as I have always an objective to set my teams to evaluate the business and a different digital marketing initiatives. So that strategy will come to the business, where the business will always look to enable the program to achieve the strategic goals through innovation projects and activities. Now it started with the creation of the project. Now the business folks will go and then start a project creation, and they put an activities which talks about, okay, because the business knows the platform better than anyone, because they are the one who see what kind of websites have been implemented, what kind of ABC abandoned cart programs have been derived, what kind of journeys that we need to design for onboarding, engagement, upsell, cross-sell programs, and what are all our integration procedures, data level, how we should implement our different studios to expand the channel reach. Now that once that's done, then the next level would be the critical success factors or the metrics to define the success factor or a metric to each goal so that the progress can be measured on a periodic basis. So these are all really important for every, sometimes where I feel every user story to define a critical success factor. That way, because user story is a combination of multiple subtasks which have a higher weightage of, let's take an example. Let's take one user channel where I would like to implement a personalization for my website so that the traffic would be increased drastically from the next 10% to 30%. So that's a high level user story which breaks down a different kind of an activities that can be measured on a periodic basis. Let's take an example. Have 10 tasks. So for each and every task, what things that I would like to achieve. So how much increment, how is the revenue, how is the website visits, how many leads has been generated, how many email metrics. So it would be always too good to define a success factors at a user story level or a task level. That gives a lot of momentum for a business. That's the strategic, right? So when it comes to the stakeholders, so as we said, right, document both internal and external stakeholders in the project program charter. So for an internal, so there are people which I believe, and internal people like marketers, channel teams, digital channel teams, digital marketing teams, marketing leadership, business leadership, IT, other channels, things like web channel, social, direct print, and all that stuff. They're all a part of internal teams, internal stakeholders. For external stakeholders, the program wise, account executives, the Salesforce or success managers, because they are the one who does the product, right? So they are ideally called external programmers. So when it comes to the external, the customers, ideally we have our own subscribers, the customers who join as a lead for us, and the customers are leads and the prospects. So these are all the three different level of stakeholders from a program chapter perspective, or internal, external, or customers. Sometimes external programmers are we as well because we are the consulting partner or a person or a team who implemented a marketing cloud project for a customer. So as I said, that's what partners, agencies. So we're all a part of our external programming for a stakeholders perspective. Let's talk about our center of excellence. So this is the most key and the critical area where people will talk about what is center of excellence. You see, right, in any enterprise company, I see a COE team is there. When I work with the big companies, I see there's a COE team. Uh, Everybody does it. What is COE? COE is a center of excellence, which drives execution of the processes by which organization identify, prioritize, assign, execute, and communicate. So ideally, in a layman's term, so these are the people who execute the projects and who communicate to the business folks, saying that what kind of a team you required, what kind of knowledge you require, what kind of technology you have to leverage, that derives your project execution as well. Because it's a team where they'll execute the projects ideally in a single shot, a team who executes the projects, which is nothing but a center of excellence. What they do is they have an advisory board, they have the change control board, they have the steering or executive committee board. So you can see all these three teams as a part of a COE as well. So this is where the most critical element for any project, for any enterprise level project, because these are all the very key people. So if you see, okay, this guy is from COE team, it means like this guy knows the process, this guy knows what are all the projects which is running on, and he has a team, he has the processes, he has the knowledge, and he has the technologies as well. So that's called center of excellence. So the biggest question, why COE is really important. CO is really important because this drives organizations to identify, prioritize, execute, and communicate their business goals, as I said. And they are the one who maximize the people, processes, knowledge, and technology. And they are the one who ensures high value for all users and meet their overall business goals, because they are the one who are the heart of the project. From every sign off will come from COE team itself, because they are the key prospects, the key folks from the business, which can drive the entire organization. That's why they're really important. So you should understand what are all their areas of responsibilities, because you understand what their high level does, and you need to understand what areas of responsibility they are. So they have some of the best practices across a wide range of areas responsibility. if you look at the their entire the pyramid structure, so they'll start with the program charter and brand and style guide, messaging governance, reporting, operating model, and organizational strategy, leadership, tactical roles, campaign management, workflow and QA, communications, content management, data governance process as well. So if you look at, right, like they have their execution sponsors, the steering committee, program team, delivery teams. There are different delivery teams like marketing load track, ID track, marketing goal track, like So it's all like So these are the teams who will talk to executive sponsors, other steering committee teams, and they're the one who got the decisions or the issues or resolutions that comes to the business, which is nothing but the different marketing cloud teams and IT teams. So these are all the some of the best practices where COE will responsible for, because they are the one who does all this shop. They are the one who talk to the marketing different agencies to get the content for us to implement the email templates, and they're the one who drives the reporting, because once marketing cloud campaign has been executed, and we'll get the engagement analytics, right? So these are the analytics where they'll review it, because they are the one who review all the analytics and take them to the business management. They'll report to the CMO. So CMO, they'll look into it. What is the last month metric versus this month versus next month, last 3 months, last 6 months, all the reporting they'll talk about it. And they're the one who hiring the entire marketing cloud team, who define who is the right partner for them to understand and work with. So they're the one who design the campaigns. They have the internal campaign management team, everyone. So they look at the governance, they look at the content, everything. So that's what they're very key into the project. So this is the structure, the center of excellence. So if you look at the center of excellence team, when you talk about my center of excellence team, so this is what it starts with. So they have an ID representative, data manager, campaign manager, designer, marketing operations team, project management team. So these are all the part of the project management. Next, we have a program management. After that, change control board, CCB. After that, steering committee. Next, executive sponsors. It's like a kind of stack approach, like a low to a bottom level approach to a high level approach, like last in first out in our typical array terms, right? So these are all some of the roles and responsibilities for a COE. What executive sponsors does, steering committee does, change management team does, or technical director or the program manager does, or the business teams does. So ideally, every role which comes with the COE, let's take an example of executive sponsor. So he's the one to see the business vision from a Salesforce program perspective, set the priorities and street teams. Steering committee provides execution vision and application enterprise level representation, and they are the one who finally show an escalation points. Change management who conduct the stakeholder assessment across all the initiatives, and they are the one to execute change management plan as well. We have technical directors who are responsible for the overall technical approach for the program, which establish the technology standards, governance, guidelines, which manage escalations and risk mitigation from a technical standpoint. And they are the one who does or manages technical vendor relationships as well. When it comes to the program manager, so is responsible for overall business engagement for the program, to establish business standards and guidelines, to coordinate the business resources, to manage the business vendor relationships. So this is what the internal COE look like, the biggest team, right? From a day-to-day operation perspective, so as I said, right, so we have our big guys, the big guns. We have are the key resources who really works in ground. So the marketing operations, the create and run the marketing campaigns, the project manager who manages the project key paces, deliverables, and testing. The designer, we require designer for building an HTML content and all the stuff, who provides all the design content and everything. Data manager who supports for a data scientist to collect the right data, quality of data, reaching out to the right teams to identify the data sets, perform data segmentations, to scoring SQL queries and all the stuff. Marketing team who does guidance and marketing strategies for different customers. They does the customer segmentations and channels. They relay tracking efficiency KPIs, and from IT, ensure the data is available from all the data marts, data warehouse, external systems, third-party systems. They are the one who does all the ID, the rest of the ID. Key resource for Salesforce core integration as well, like connecting Marketing Cloud with Sales Service Clouds with Marketing Cloud Connect, and connecting Marketing Cloud with third-party external systems via an APIs, and if you have data sitting in data warehouse such as Snowflake or any other. So these are all the teams who connecting data warehouse with Salesforce Marketing Cloud via SFTP locations. So these are the people who does the main stuff on a day-to-day operations from a COE perspective. Let's talk about the most important thing. I would recommend everyone to follow this best practices for us to start with or execute with a campaign, right? So let's talk about campaign operations team. So what that does is, so there is an intake form available to manage the request for campaigns and deployment. So this is a campaign look like. So this campaign form that gives a lot of momentum for every campaign manager, the channel manager who executes the campaign in Marketing Cloud. I'll give this form directly to our client to fill it up. The request is campaign details, proof list, and I need seed list and other details as well. If you look at the campaign form, right, I need some of the information in order to execute a successful campaign, or I need some information for I can give it to my developers to start working with what kind of assets and all the stuff. You see, requested by date of request, email address or phone number of the concerned person, because as an enterprise company you get a lot of campaigns execution from a different countries, right? And if you're managing a COE team, which is center of excellence team in one location, ideally you should collect all the forms from across the countries and then you have to execute that. So every country have a separate team to manage and admins or internal QA and all the stuff, or you have one team to manage every country as well. So these form would really makes a lot of beneficial for every campaign or every team. You see the campaign name, which business unit the campaign needs to be executed, when is the send date of the emails, send time, seed send time, time zone, assets and CRF due, when we'll get an assets, first approve, when we'll get due date, estimated audience count, estimated number of audience segments, creative agency, who's the one who provides HTML designs, what is the job number, dynamic, recent, rush request, proof list, everything. If this form contains all the information. So would love to recommend and request our every partner or external stakeholders who derives the project or executes the project with this form would be really beneficial for us. When it comes to the checklist, why checklist is really important for execution of a campaign? That's really required, right? Because sometimes where we follow, if we forward something, and you need to follow a checklist in order to execute a perfect campaign. The checklist can be used for your campaign details, capturing campaign information, your quality assurance and testing, your approvals as well. Because sometimes we ensure that systematic testing is designed for the creative, including graphics, right? Dynamic elements like landing pages, links, and all the stuff. And these are all some of the elements where we never gonna miss. That's where I would recommend everyone to follow a QA checklist that contains your if a campaign email contains a plain text is required or HTML required, what is the subject line, what is the content, if you really got a content, what are all the pre-header, what is the standard header, what is the top banner, what is the primary major match assets. So this is a checklist which everyone need to follow. Would be nice to have as a QA perspective. So that gives a lot of advantage for as a team in order to get the necessary details, and then let the role start. The ball is going to be start once we get all this information. So manage a QA checklist would always be a good for any good health project. So now we understand high level program management, campaign COE benefits, and the campaign checklist, QA checklist. Now we'll talk about scope management. So let's see if anyone has any questions before I move into scope management. So I have another 10-15 slides. So I'll see if anyone has any questions. So no questions. So what I'll do is I'll just continue with please feel free to post your questions. If you have any questions or doubts as well, put it in the chat and then I'll explain after the session as well, right? Let's go to our scope, the real one, the real slide where everyone is quite keen to looking into it, the scope management. Well, so what are all the tools for scope management? So I personally feel like when we start scope management, so the solution scope is one of the great tool which carries a list of all the deliverables and activities that the program team is responsible for, because we are the program team whom we are responsible for building a scope for a solution. Let's take an example. A bound and cart program with triggered send within 2 hours. So my requirement is to send a campaign or a kind of an email to a customer who done a checkout or who had the items to a cart, but he never done a checkout. So I would expecting a team or a system of team or a system does my job in 2 hours. And I want to implement a model email capture on websites, onboarding journey for new customers, upsell programs, resell programs for my customers as well. That's what solution scope. And the scope, roles, and responsibilities, which include to identify the project team members, as well as executive leadership roles that will responsible for defining scope, approving projects, signing off on deliverables, and generally managing scope. So these are all the people who, once we design the scope, so we need some sign-offs from leadership teams. Otherwise, we can't able to go further. That's where it really matters for us, right? And the scope control team, especially the process of monitoring the status of the scope of the project. So these are the teams who monitor the status of the scope of the project, which is nothing but the project manager closely work with the project team to focus only on the project in scope. Though he is a person or the she is a person using a defined work, the breakdown structure, the WBS, the work breakdown structure. And we have the last related project programs. So let's take an example at the time of solution scoping or kind of a deliverables or activities that we're starting with, program management. So we know, is there any related project or the programs that is really intact with the digital program? It may or may not depend upon, right? Sometimes the cross cloud programs will come into the picture. They want a lead to be created in marketing cloud via cloud page. At the same time, they want to send the data back to sales cloud for a sales cloud and then assign to the one of the agent to interact with them via different channels, right? At the same time, there are some third party systems such as ERP or data warehouse implementation where they would like to bring like a third party which is not related to the current project, which always a good practice to ask these questions. Is there any related projects or related program or tools to be involved, or website redesign or relaunch? So you should comes with all this as a part of the scope. So please make ask all these questions, because these are all the stuff where we need to keep focus on. And otherwise it should be more, once we start the requirement and suddenly they'll come middle of the project, they'll ask you, oh, can we start doing this integration or doing that integration, and we will not well define at the level of middle of the project, right? And which causes a two-way kind of a thing, whether if you're a partner, they'll feel, the customer feels like, oh, these guys are bombarding us with lot of money and all the stuff. And if you define at the initial project, the impression is completely different. So that you should deprioritize some of the request and then prioritize this request. So you should manage according to the scope benefit perspective. If you look at our project methodology, right? So every organization has its own project methodology. It's important to align from the standard perspective that always guide to the digital marketing programs in the project. If you look at adaptive methodology timeline, so we'll initiate, because the project management lifecycle start with to initiate the requirement gathering, and after that they'll ask you the implementation plan based on the requirement gathering as well. Once we start the implementation plan, then we'll start the execution and then we'll close it. Simple, right? So within this adaptive methodology, we have this different stages of the project. Planning. After that, I'll take a 2 weeks of solution architecture or 3 weeks of solution architecture, and after that, I'll do a construction of a design from the business requirements, and after that, I'll validate with my internal teams whether what I've designed is something that should be validated, and it always, as a best practice, to validate with the client as well, so that you don't see any surprises at the middle of the project. Then you see deploy and support. So I always recommend for everyone to give some good demos to the customers on every week or 2 weeks, so that you'll understand what you understand from the business requirements. At the same time, like a sprint demos every 2 weeks at the end of the each sprint, we always give a demos to the customers to validate what we have envisioned at the initial requirement phase, what we built at the time of validation phase. So that's what it comes with complete monitoring and control, because that's where key area for our project management teams to monitor and control the priority of business. And as I said, if someone comes middle of the project, please ask the relevant teams to deprioritize some of the elements and then prioritize the highest elements. That gives a good health of the project. That gives a good impression from a partner perspective as well, right? So as I said, initially risk management. So this is one of the risk management slide where you should understand the roles and responsibilities. What are all the different kind of risk IDs available while implementing a project, and how we can appropriately follow the strategies and how should follow some certain strategies, as well as documenting such information to the project teams and the stakeholders as well. As I said, if you see anything which is risk at the time of initial thing, please raise it down, something like this. So you can use a kind of a slide, put some risk ID, some R001 something, and then put the description of the risk, put a score of the risk, put the responses, what to mitigate, what is the action plan which we need to mitigate this risk, and define the score always would gives a lot of momentum, so that the people will alert, and then they'll follow up with the right teams to get the need to get whatever you need, right? So these are all some of the risk management techniques, like resources not availability, unclear of solution architecture, or insufficient funds for contingent resources. Mostly the risk will come factor of resources, number one, what I feel. And the next risk will comes up with your architecture is a guy who from different teams, and then he done some architecture, and while you're doing development you have a lot of plenty of questions where, and then the architecture left the project, and then some other architecture will come, will take a lot of time. It's a kind of a risk as well. And because the blueprint you design one, and then the one which you're getting is completely different. So I see most of the cases. And contingent resources, as I said, like most of the times it's all like funding resources. And some people won't take ownership always, so unclear ownership of project A and project B and all the work streams. So these ownerships and everything, as I said, the COE will take care of all these kind of things. That's where the COE plays a huge role in our entire project implementation, right? So we talked about our risk management. Now we talked about going to talk about the constraints and assumptions. We always have a constraints, right? As a project management teams, we always have a typical constraints where what is the cost, schedule, scope, quality. So that comes, let's consider some of the examples where the project must be completed by hard date, as I said, right? So the implementation plan will ask you the date of delivery. That may go or extend sometime. That it never comes low, it always extends, right? Due to some lot of dependencies that we already articulated the risk factor level. Staff availability, resource availability, integration with external systems where they don't have clear idea on the data model, clear idea on who will take the ownership at a third party level. So sometimes where we don't have some SFTP locations availability, or complaints will ask and we can't able to provide SFTP keys to other organization, other third party partners. So these are all some of these examples for constraints. When it comes to assumptions, so uh, every project has an assumptions that makes the conditions and resources on which the program framework, budget, and all the right. See, I don't know the requirements, but I'll still assume and then do some planning. It's not a bad thing to have an assumptions, but make sure you always have specific initiatives in your mind to make sure that initiatives will cover under your entire project phase. Coming to the resources, either internal partner or some Salesforce company resources, we should assume, okay, I need so and so resources, I need so and so architects, and I need so and so support team to be available. Put some end user experience with some screenshots or enablement programs. Put a good communication plan, compliance and other policies. So put all these under assumptions so that you'll have some you have some room, or you have some time to reach out to all these team members to get your doubts to be clarified, right? So the most important thing about after COE, that what I feel is a communications plan. Without this, we can't able to move forward, because open communication with stakeholders is always a good help for the project. At the same time, it's always a crucial for an ongoing success of the program. So when you look at the communication plan, right? So people think me. So funny, what communication tools you leverage ideally in order to talk to our stakeholders? So we need to prepare a repository, either SharePoint or anyone, or a tool where we use Jira, Confluence, or any other tools where it has a key tools where program charter, issue or log reporting. You can log all the reports that should be visible to stakeholders. Huh? So it should be always a good health. And as I told, send a repository for a project documentation. You use SharePoint teams or any other stuff. Not it's up to the between customer versus client. Ad hoc email notifications and team progress reporting. So on a weekly basis, send a notification on the project status. So kind of one sheet, one template to the stakeholders. That gives a lot of momentum, a lot of advantage for us, the implementation partners. A team calendar, availability calendar, resource planning, and all the stuff, and escalation plan as well. Always should be on keep. So when it comes to the reporting, key tools are really important. The reporting is something that status reports on individual status reports, weekly status reports, steering committee reports, management reports, how many milestones we completed, is there any questions you required, any dependencies, risks, open issues, scope changes, plans, everything. So as a project manager, you have to be a good plan for every project. So ideally this communication plan, most 90% or 99% I see on every project. I don't see any communication plan that never go out to the stakeholders. Every project, the most number of projects which I work with have this plan ideally. Yes. So that's a kind of a communication plan and the elements of communication plan as well, right? When it comes to the meetings, so we have a plan, but in terms of a meetings, it's also good for a project, good implementation project, or good governance of a digital program, digital project management, or a marketing cloud, or any respect of any cloud. So it should be a consistency to develop our internal versus an external, or the campaign teams or internal stakeholders, like a daily stand-up, a 15-minute stand-up call, which talk about the project, any issues with the project or what's going on and everything, kind of a project status or accomplishments, obstacles or anything. Weekly team meetings for channel teams, uh, and monthly review meetings with the digital marketing team, leadership teams, quarterly business review with your IT, business stakeholders, success teams, partner teams, which you define the accomplishments, plan and prioritize initiatives in the next 2 3 months, business seasonal planning, chart updates, review campaigns, uh, campaign metrics, and all the stuff. So these are all the minimal meetings where every enterprise company does follows. At the same time, for every small and medium companies, they'll at least go with the daily stand-ups or a weekly, bi-weekly stand-ups as well with the customers. So the next thing is the change management. We talk about all the elements, right, to become a marketing cloud successful project. So this change management also a part of a key area for good implementation. So this change management, which comes with different strategies. The number one is testing strategy. Always, when you start with the marketing cloud provisioning, so customers can create their own versions of marketing cloud or testing environments, uh, because we have our enterprise nowadays. We have enterprise 2.0 account as provision for customers to use as test, or they leverage different additional BUs, because you have a primary BU and you can create one more BU for testing, right? So this is where the strategy will come into the picture. So which one you need to leverage? You would leverage a separate account, means a separate marketing cloud account, or you leverage additional BU. So these are some of the things which comes out at the initial testing strategy, because that's where the test leads will come into the picture to execute the marketing cloud environment. They'll ask you which environment we would like to execute, whether a proper enterprise 2.1 account or additional BU. So it's all the architecture will take care of it, which one should to go with. But this is the common question everyone will ask us. So we look at the quality assurance, kind of coming to marketing cloud implementation. So content, quality assurance, technical, campaign. So these are all the three area where QA is more responsible for. When it comes to the content, so have a there's a team who do a proof review. Ideally, the proof envelope information and content testing. The content QA team will do subject line, form line, pre-header, copy, images, links, landing pages. They do all this content testing. Technical testing point of, these are the people who run the campaigns, run the journeys, uh, run the queries, automations, and all the stuff. They do the data integration, program reporting, and everything. And the campaign team who does the complex sense using dynamic content and the sophisticated segmentation, resource accordingly to. So these are the teams who does multiple versions of testing, because they are the one who create a new version, new journeys, and then they'll play around it to verify the audience, whether the audience is coming or not, whether the existing audience already part of the journey, which you haven't stopped it, but again, it'll still continue to receive duplicate emails. So they'll test dynamic content, they'll leverage AMP script, they'll do AMP script testing, triggered sends, drip campaigns. So they do plenty of things. The campaign testing teams. So ideally, we have these kind of testing, the quality assurance teams available in a marketing cloud, where they do their own test levels for a good great enterprise companies. So the most important thing, uh, in order to become a good marketing cloud or managing a marketing cloud org, it's always to have a release readiness team, because the marketing cloud and Salesforce have multiple releases. Everybody know every 3 months we have a release, for a 4 months we have a release ideally. So we have multiple releases throughout the year. So each release will contain a new features that will be, bumping into our existing orgs. So they want to roll out on a users level, they want to roll out at a, the org level. So it's always important to have a plan for release readiness, because we have a separate team for a COE, a center of excellence. We have a separate team for release readiness team. So what they do is, they'll, whenever the release date is 23rd of January, tomorrow or day after tomorrow is my release, my new features will be hit into my marketing cloud org. So once the new releases will be hitting into marketing cloud org by so and so time, so immediately in the day, the quality team, the regression team, we have teams in SQA. We have different teams. So we would expect the regression team to be do a complete testing of across the marketing cloud org, and they are the team who design the test cases based on the new releases, and they are the one who executes whether this will be impacting on our current marketing cloud org, what is impacting once you change enhance domains or any other features. Is there anything that the domain changes, and it will impact on all your cloud pages and the send deliverability and all the other stuff, right? So they are the one who does all this. So they'll prepare for a release, and what are all the features, what are all updates coming into it. What they'll do is they'll prepare a sheet, because we get to know before 1 month or 45 days what are all the new features are hitting into production orgs. So the team who designs this, they'll come up with all the features or the test cases. They'll get an approval to the internal teams or the success managers. Once they'll align with the internal teams, so what they'll do is they'll do complete regression testing with an existing marketing cloud arc, and then they'll start implementing those changes. And after that, they'll do end user enablement and resources as well. Once these guys done end-to-end test, they'll give some demos to the internal or countrywide business teams or the countrywide channel campaign teams, so that they'll also aware of it, what are all the new enablers coming into the picture. All right, so if you want to see some release notes, for you can always sign up for the notifications. You can just click on MC release notes. So this will go, and then you can subscribe it, so that you'll get notifications on every release. So this is most important thing, from a good successful project execution standpoint. This is the one of the key area where all the enterprise companies build us. I see most of the companies where I work with, so they have this kind of, irrespective of the clouds. So you do all this structure for every cloud. If you have 5 clouds, you do the same process for preparing for release. And then you can, because for marketing cloud we can't span up the release orgs and then do it. It is just to check the updates and features, and then prepare the plan along with prepare the plan, and then execute with the program charter teams, and then do test regression test, and then implement it, and then done enablement. That's what we do for marketing cloud. So the last thing, data architecture and management team, as I said, as a part of a complete implementation, a good governance process, you have to follow certain data elements. The most important thing what I would recommend is the best practices, data quality. As I said, clean data before loading into Salesforce. Queries can help you monitor data quality. Data security perspective, apply your corporate security guidelines to the marketing cloud data. For example, the policy of least privileges, leveraging the admin tool in marketing cloud. So we have some admin tools in marketing cloud where we can leverage managing account permissions as business unit permissions, FTP credentials, API usage. So that's a part of a data security standpoint. When it comes to data retention policies, so you have a feature in data extension while creation, so you can always use the data retention policies. So what it does is it'll automatically purge the data. Let's suppose we don't need this data. You're creating a test DE. Let's take an example. You created a test DE, and you use a test DE for storing data from data warehouse. So every day the test DE loading a data of 50 million records, and suddenly you haven't enabled the data retention feature. If you can't keep or can't enable the data retention policies, what it does is it'll pile up the records of subscribers, and then will cost your organization marketing cloud organization edition. That will cost your organization, and it'll give you a wrong impression for the management of the org perspective, right? So always leverage a data retention feature if you don't use the data anymore, so that it always gives us but for a better prospect, for a better quality of data as well. So these are all the 3 best practices for governance perspective from a data architecture and management area: quality of data, security of data, retention of data. These three are really important from a marketing cloud standpoint. I would really recommend everyone to do this for a better process, for a better management tool from a data perspective. When it comes to the technical best practices from a data management, data architecture, so always use shared data extension instead of replicating across business units. As an architect, I always follow shared data extensions because I have my enterprise account where I created 70 business units for my 70 countries. So one data extension of the main DE, which the data flows into different business units based on the country, shared country filter. So don't create all the data extension. Rather use the shared data extensions and then replicating, and then leverage the shared data extension, and then use it in your internal queries and all the stuff. The next thing, denormalize data when it makes sense. Always look at the data and then denormalize it. It always makes sense. Most important, use primary keys as always known for. And then the most important thing, limit data extension column lengths, which gives a lot of, as I said, denormalizing, and this will contradict the statement. But again, limit data extension column lengths. That gives, because column length takes highest space in your data structures as well, right? Make it shorter always, column lengths. Keep the total bytes of the table to less than 8,000 characters. Sum of all columns length in the data, that's what I said, right? So limit the data extension column length always less. That keeps our org should be more faster. You, when you observe, right, when you go to any data extension, sometimes when you click on data extension, you click on records, you know how much time it took to load the data. That's because of all this kind of things. If you increase your length of data extension, you increase a lot of fields, you added a lot of, plenty of fields, plenty of columns and all the stuff, will take a lot of time to load, and it will give you a lot of drastic load time that doesn't look good for a marketing cloud area. So I always feel that these are all some of the best practices would technically would follow for every marketer or every person who is managing the marketing cloud. The most important when updating data extension, right? So use delta files instead of full refresh. When you do an automation, right? When you do an automation, so let's take an example. When you do work with financial systems, because I work with a financial system which is more than 120 millions of data. First time you have 120 millions of data will be loading into the platform with multiple automations. From the next time you have a delta will come into the picture. You no need to load every 120 million on all the day, right? If you do so, then you're not using marketing cloud as for marketing purpose. You're using a data warehouse inside marketing cloud. Don't use that. Don't do this as well. When you do 120 million records inserting into, that's a master data inserting into marketing cloud. From the next time onwards, from third parties, you're getting a delta feed into marketing cloud, right? So in automations, you always use the updating operation rather than inserting all the data into the updating the existing data extension, which takes days of time, and you never get a resulting output, and the data will not flow automations or anywhere. So make sure when you do it, use delta change always. So these are all some of the technical best practices what I would recommend for our team from a data architecture and a management perspective. Right. Let's go to the next slide. So the last one, recommendations and the next steps. So my recommendations always to have, when you want to become a good program governance teams, to meet your teams to determine the what elements of governance you already have in place. I know some of the companies won't have governance, but I would strictly recommend to have this governance in place. And you need to know what you need to work on as well. Draft the program charter, use your complete accelerators to guide your effort, use your program charter for make sure to involve all stakeholders too and get alignment on the charter before finalizing. There is one more where some of the customers where so they have the center of COE team available, but if you don't have a COE team, so don't worry about it. You yourself gonna start a COE team to define your own COE team inside your organization, right? So these some of the accelerators and the recommendations where it'll give you a one-on-one engagement that will help you with the tactical details of setting up your robust COE. So if you don't have as well, as I said, let's start with today onwards, what kind of team that you would like to set up with, then use a program charter to define all your placeholders, and then start governing the systems and the process and the people and everything. So there are some of the recommendations which I would recommend from a implementation perspective. So from a success resources, so as everyone know, Salesforce is a good success customer platform. So from every step of a journey, there are plenty of resources available, plenty of programs which is going on. So from a resource standpoint, we have a trailhead, we have success communities, help portals. From an adoption standpoint, we have accelerators, interactive webinars, events are going on, our trailblazers, true trailblazers. They'll proactively engage with the trailblazing community and then helping all our customers. So from advisory service point of view, so there are architects available who will advise. There's an architect panel. There is a customer-centric design, strategic services, transformation services teams available for you to pay as you go kind of a model. So let's do it yourself, do it with me, or show it how it goes. So all the areas where Salesforce become a number one customer success platform does it everything for us, and that gives a lot of momentum for us to execute a good successful project management with a good alignment of resources, programs, and experts to fit our needs. So that's a lot, team. That's it from my side. So I'm not too boring with this session for sure. Definitely something for. I feel some folks. I feel all of them definitely is going to useful on this session. I'm basically technical savvy. I'm a tech savvy. Tomorrow is going to start technical sessions, but today this is something more important for every good successful project. This is a number one area. If you want to start a project, this is the number one area. Everyone should follow this, and then you have to do this kind of a thing. It's always good. So gives a lot of good for a project management and execution of a project as well. So any questions, team? And if no, thank you once again. So let's see if anyone has any questions.
Thanks, Funny. It was a wonderful session. So we have a couple of questions, Funny. So Ayush is asked. Oh, sorry. So Madhur Saini is asking, how does additional BU help?
Okay. Well, I think mother, there's a two kind of an idea, right? So as a team, as an architect, if I'm an architect, what I believe is from a technical standpoint, like so it always have a good practice to have one additional BU. So there are a lot of elements. You don't require a one BU. One BU should be sufficient for managing everything, including testing as well. But make sure sometimes you really don't know, right? When newcomer comes into your team and then you given access to the team, that guy went and fired an email with the live data extension. You really don't know that, right? Without any proper KT, I would still believe within one business unit, the primary BU, you can manage testing, development, everything. But in most of the cases, for a project health perspective, manage one more BU to make it as a cloning of the primary BU, and then you can do a lot of testing with the same BU with dummy data extensions, testing data extension, all the stuff. I would prefer 50-50. It's all based on the team's alignment and the budget of the customer as well. Yes. Delta means update the DE instead of overriding the DE. That's right, Muthukumaran. That's always good. Delta is always whatever the new changes we are coming into data extension, right? You just capture those new changes and then update the DE rather than inserting because the subscriber key. So an SQL query activity, so you can just use that customer ID or a subscriber key, find subscriber key, and then you can go and then update only that row. Can we create a testing BU inside main BU? There is no testing BU as such, Sophia. So the main BU itself, you're going to treating as a testing, like a testing or development or everything. But I always believe that, so create a separate folder called testing. And then within the folder, create the same structure. You have a production data extension, right? Clone the production DE, name it as a testing DE, and then the data will not come. The structure will come and then add the own records and then use this DE for all the testing of your journey and everything. Automations are everywhere. Yeah. Any other questions, team? I think hope this session helped you for sure. So just wrapping this up. And tomorrow we have, let me share my screen. So
Funny. Yeah, quiz as well.
yes. I'm just going into it. So let me share my screen. So tomorrow we have a good session. So today we completed our marketing cloud implementation. Tomorrow I'm going to talk about now it start with infrastructure setup, the marketing cloud admin setup and the infrastructure setup. So tomorrow I would like to talk about what are the different kinds of marketing cloud edition. What is the best marketing cloud edition that we need to fit for, what is the right edition that we need to recommend to the customers, and how to identify marketing cloud edition, the screen navigation, how to log into marketing cloud. Now it starts all the real implementation. Now we understand the program governance and all the implementation overview. Now we're gonna start with infra setup, how to set up the marketing cloud org, how to create a user role, how to deactivate the user, how to give a product level permissions. So tomorrow I would like to talk about this session. So you can join without fail so that you'll understand this is most important session, because this is where you start with your journey with the marketing cloud. I can explain how to provision the marketing cloud org, whom we need to reach out, how to get the free marketing cloud trial org for the partners. So we have some good session tomorrow. Please be joined so that you'll learn something. So from this session onwards, we have pure technical, like setup, domains, and what marketing cloud does, everything. So this from this session onwards, you can see a lot of interview questions from the interviews as well. Right? Thank you, Prashant. So to you. So everything is yours. I'll stop recording so that you could run the session.
Okay.